Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 731, Purple Apex Flames. Han Li sat cross-legged in the meditation room on the building's second floor. His eyes were tightly shut and azure light flowed from his body. With hands forming a strange incantation gesture, an egg-sized ball of purple flame floated from his palm, gently wavering without end. This devil flame was something that Han Li created from the celestial ice flames and the six-winged frost centipede's glacial chi. This flame's power was an entire stage higher than that of the celestial ice flames, causing it to become Han Li's greatest killing move at the moment. This purple devil flame was something that Han Li gradually created after he refined a sliver of the celestial ice flames. And in order to differentiate it from the sacred azura flames, he named it the purple apex flames. He was convinced that if this flame caught onto the body of even a late nascent soul cultivator, they definitely wouldn't be able to resist it. As for whether or not it could actually kill them, there was no way of guessing. However, it was pity that although the flame's true might was inconceivable, it was limited on the quantity of celestial ice flames he could refine. If he somewhat managed to gather together several times his current amount, he may find himself capable of openly contending against late nascent soul cultivators. Han Li heard Silver Moon click her tongue in astonishment from the back of his mind. "Congratulations, Master. I seem to have underestimated the purple apex flames. They appear quite a bit more powerful, and there will be even greater potential in the future." He silently smiled in response and simply took a breath, turning the purple apex flames into a strand of flame and breathing it inside him. He then released the incantation gesture he was holding and ceased his casting. Han Li opened his eyes and slowly said, "Although the purple apex flames were potent, the quantity is just far too little to be reliably used. What I am hoping for the most is that I will be able to open the Heaven Void Cauldron. If what you said about it being a divine spirit treasure was true, I'll be able to sweep across the entire heavenly south with it in hand, and reach a realm of power where I will have no worries." Silver Moon sweetly chuckled and confidently said, "Please don't worry, Master. The Heaven Void Cauldron is as powerful or even greater than what I've said." Han Li nodded his head and thought to say something else when a streak of white light suddenly flew inside his room. Yingning's clear voice suddenly echoed through the air. "Marshal Senior Han, quickly hurry to the main hall. Senior Ma has returned and the Mulan are about to arrive." Once that was said, the streak of white light flew back outside. With a sullen expression on his face, a cold glint shined through his eyes as he flew out. When Han Li arrived inside the main hall, Jiyu Shuangpu, Old Man Ma, and the large bald man were already present, along with a hunchbacked embroidered-robed cultivator with a pale complexion. He was currently walking with the others. As for the core formation cultivators, there were two unfamiliar additions to the four from before. They were currently standing by at the side with solemn expressions. But when Yingning saw Han Li enter, she sweetly smiled at him. The large bald man forced a smile and spoke with feigned ease. "Fellow Daoist Han has arrived. Let me give introductions. This is fellow Daoist Bu Yunhe, the one who was in charge of Sky Terrace Valley. Fellow Daoist Bu, this is fellow Daoist Han of the Drifting Cloud sect." When Han Li saw this, his mood sank. It seemed the situation was worse than he had imagined. Wearing a kind expression, Han Li politely said, "I have long heard of fellow Daoist Bu's grand reputation from Brother Lu. I admire you for being able to safely escape." Already informed of Han Li by the others, the cultivator surnamed Bu didn't reveal any surprise by his appearance. Rather, Bu Yunhe bitterly smiled and said, "I've made a sorry display of myself and have earned fellow Daoist Han's mockery. It was only thanks to fellow Daoist Ma's assistance that I was able to escape danger." He then turned towards Old Man Ma with a grateful expression. The old man chuckled. It was nothing but a slight effort. However, those pursuers took the initiative to retreat before I even had the chance to test my ancient treasure. It was quite disappointing. With trepidation on his face, Bu Yunhe said, fellow Daoist's ancient treasure possesses truly astonishing might. The pursuing spell warriors naturally didn't wish to encounter you as they felt uncertain of their victory. But it must be said that the current Mulan invasion is far different from the ones in the past. Not only do the spell warriors have far better training, they are supported by ancient, ferocious beasts. These beasts are incredibly huge, with dense rough flesh clad in battle armor. There are also many strange restrictions that are placed on their bodies. When these creatures charge into any grand formations, the grand formation's destruction will only be a matter of time. A strange expression appeared on Han Li's face. Don't tell me that several nascent soul cultivators wouldn't be able to slay this beast together. Although he already knew the spell warrior armies brought along huge beasts, he had no idea they would be as unfathomably formidable as this. After a moment of thought, Bu Yunha's expression relaxed. With the full might of a strike from my magic treasure, I was able to wound a beast. However, I was jointly attacked by 2 high-grade spell warriors, and was too occupied to slay the beast before it destroyed the grand formation. Fellow Daoist Lu should be able to easily hold this formation with reinforcements from fellow Daoist Ma and the others. It shouldn't fall as easily as Sky Terrace Valley. Jiyu Shuangpu gloomily said, fellow Daoist Bu, how many sage-level spell warriors are there in this army? If there are few, our force of 5 nascent soul warriors should be able to catch them unprepared. Even if we can't slay 1 or 2 of their nascent soul-grade spell warriors, we should be able to gravely injure them. Bu Yunhe sighed and said, I'm afraid I must disappoint Brother Jiyu. I spotted one of the strange spell warriors that had been earlier described together with 2 of the sage-level spell warriors. While that strange spell warrior didn't attack, his body carried an extremely strange aura, perhaps due to some transformation. Moreover, I suspect there were more high-grade spell warriors hidden amongst their army. The large bald man nodded, so it seems that we still have much to ponder if they're hiding their strength. If they are too powerful, we will have to drag them into the grand formation. In any case, our main objective is only to stall for time. Jiyu Shuangpu frowned, appearing dissatisfied with this decision, but he didn't press the issue. Neither Han Li or Old Man Ma raised any objections as well. As a result, the large bald man had Chong Shuzi lead Bu Yunhe to a meditation room to recover, and had Yingning and the others make arrangements for the routed Sky Terrace Valley cultivators as well added them to the garrison. The large man's thorough arrangements were much to Han Li's approval. The 9 Nations Union had sent this man to guard this location for a reason. At that moment, the rumbling sounds of a drum could be heard from a distance. Additionally, the sounds began to echo like rolls of thunder. Those in the hall grimaced at its appearance. Suddenly, a layer of frost seemed to exude from Old Man Ma's face. With killing intent contained in his voice, he said, it seems the Mulan have arrived. They were only a step behind us. The large bald man cupped his fist to Han Li and the other 2 nascent soul cultivators. That's fine. Let us test them first and see if the army of spell warriors have any formidable characters to speak of. For now, I'll have to trouble you 3 fellow Daoists. He then turned his head to the 2 core formation cultivators that had arrived with Bu Yunhe. You 2, come and follow us out. As you've already fought them before, you should know of a few sinister tricks up their sleeve, and be able to give us a warning. One of the core formation cultivators had thick eyebrows and tan skin. The other had a gloomy, horse-shaped face. When they heard the large bald man, they both glanced at each other before promptly saluting him and acknowledging his orders. Han Li then turned his head in the direction of the beating drums and expressionlessly gazed into the distance. To the south of the Yellow Dragon Mountains, a large number of Mulan spell warriors made their approach. They densely filled the horizon with dots in an orderly arrangement as they flew above the green mist down below them. At the very front of the spell warrior army, there were over a dozen people standing side to side, with various spirit lights and treasure auras flickering from their bodies. They were the high-grade spell warriors of the Mulan army. Among them, there were 3 that were particularly eye-catching. A man enveloped in red light with a thick, malevolent flame snake twisting all over his body. A shriveled man as tall as a bamboo pole, appearing as if the very wind could throw him to the ground, and a figure enveloped in black robes. This black-robed figure had covered their face, but a black demonic chi exuded from their body along with the faint sounds of ghostly wails. This was enough to inspire fear from those around them. Despite this, there were 2 others that were escorting the black-robed figure. However, The black-robed spell warrior flew alone at the very front of the army as if he didn't belong to it. The other spell warriors turned their eyes away from the black-robed figure as if possessing both fear and awe of him. However, if one were to closely examine them, they could also see a trace of hatred as well. Chapter 732, Fire Spirit Flood Dragon. The two high-grade spell warriors at the black figure's side whispered something as if discussing how to destroy the grand formation ahead of them. Once the two finished their discussion, the oddly tall, shriveled cultivator blurred out of sight and reappeared at the side of the black-robed figure while wrapped in azure light. "Sir Heaven weep, shall we start? The grand formation here should prove to be more powerful than the last. I've also heard that there should be a few nascent soul cultivators there. I fear that it will take quite some time. There is no need for us to attack first." The black-robed spell warrior shook his head. "They have already decided to emerge. Let's first see how powerful these cultivators are before we decide what to do." He spoke hoarsely and unclear, almost as if he didn't have a tongue, much to the unease of those who heard him. When the lanky spell warrior heard this, he blinked in surprise and glanced down towards the green mist. As expected, a previously still area of the green mist suddenly began to roil and split into two with flickers of light that could be seen from within. Soon after, 7 streaks of light shot out from within. They circled once around in the sky before revealing themselves. They were the party of 5 nascent soul stage and 2 core formation stage cultivators. Under the bald man's command, there would be no low-grade cultivators following them with the exception of the core formation cultivators from Sky Terrace Valley and Xianxia. Han Li stopped in the air and glanced across the army of spell warriors. Of course, the 10 spell warriors leading them had attracted his attention, particularly the sinister black-robed figure. He wasn't able to stare for long as he unconsciously averted his gaze. When he saw this black-robed figure, he was immediately reminded of the bone sage, Xianxia. Could it be this person was also a ghost Dao cultivator? Han Li's heart trembled and he grew vastly more diligent. Before the bone sage seized Crooked Soul's body, his material form was dense with yin and ghostly qi. However, there was something slightly different with the black-robed figure's aura that Han Li couldn't describe for the time being. As Han Li and company arrived, the spell warriors above began to stir. The spell warrior with the python wrapped around him suddenly transformed into a huge ball of light as it shot down towards the cultivators. When Han Li and company saw this, they coldly watched in silence, revealing not a single trace of panic. So long as that spell warrior wasn't seeking his own death, he wouldn't dare to take the initiative to attack alone. As a result, the group of cultivators simply watched with hostile gazes as the huge fireball arrived 20 meters away from them. The flames emitted a scorching heat even from a distance, to the alarm of the many cultivators before them. A silhouette leaked through the flames, followed by a thunderous voice that shook the very air nearby. "I am the Fire Right Tribe's great sage Ku Yao. Since you've arrived, you must be planning to first test our skills. How do you intend to have a competition? One-on-one? Or a melee?" The bald man glared at the fireball and icily replied, "One-on-one. May the heavens decide who survives." Ku Yao wildly laughed from within the fireball. "Good, that's just what I wanted. I will be the first of your opponents. Prepare someone to come forward." The cultivators were furious by this, but Old Man Ma was particularly sullen. With an expression filled with killing intent, his body transformed into a streak of white light and he flew forward. The bald man hesitated for a moment, but he didn't stop the old man and silently allowed him to be the first to battle. From his point of view, he had no idea who amongst them possessed the greatest strength. Of course, he hadn't considered Han Li, who had just recently entered nascent soul stage. When Ku Yao saw the streak of white light fly forward, he silently flew back and Old Man Ma followed until they were at the center between the spell warrior army and the green mist. In this manner, both of them would be able to act without any need to hold back or fear of a sudden ambush from either side. The bald man turned to look at the horse-faced cultivator and solemnly asked, "What are the abilities of this Mulan sage? Does he have any particular techniques?" A trace of resentment appeared on his face as he answered, His fire attribute techniques are incredibly powerful. The flame python on his body is particularly nimble as well. It is difficult to defend against. A fellow core formation guard of Sky Terrace Valley had been turned to ashes by that python after being caught. Oh, it was like that. The bald man then turned to the side and doubtfully said, "Brother Gu, if I remember correctly, the Grand Pavilion's Grand Righteousness Arts is impervious to heat and flame, not to mention ghosts and wickedness. He should have an advantage against this spell warrior." With a hesitant expression in his eyes, Jiu Shuangpu slowly said, "It's hard to say. If they're common fire attribute techniques, the Grand Righteousness Arts would be able to deal with them without a problem. But if it's against a spell warrior's techniques that display the three essences of worldly spirit flames, I fear it would be beyond the scope of the Grand Righteousness Arts. Regardless, fellow Daoist Ma is still the most suitable among us to fight this person. Even if his Grand Righteous Arts are unable to suppress the flames, they should be able to withstand the devilish influence of the flames. There won't be any worry of inner demon backlash." When the bald man heard this, he felt his thoughts were certain and he relaxed for a moment before breathing out a long sigh. Han Li glanced at the fire python that laid within the huge fireball and he felt his heart stir. With blue light flickering from his eyes, an odd expression was momentarily betrayed from his face. At that moment, Old Man Ma held his hands together in an incantation gesture and a layer of soft white light began to glow from his body. At that same moment, he opened his mouth and spat out a silver speck of light the size of a walnut. In a large gust of wind, the silver light transformed into a ruler. It trembled for a moment before flickering with 1,000 silver lights and releasing a cry similar to the holiest phoenix of the highest heavens. Rather than act, Ku Yao remained still and indifferently glanced at the old man with folded arms with a sneer on his face. This display had inspired fury in Old Man Ma, and he coldly snorted before deciding to take the initiative to attack. At that moment, he suddenly heard a faint voice transmission in his ear, so faint it was nearly inaudible but clear nonetheless. Old Man Ma was alarmed by what he heard, and he bewilderedly glanced around before his gaze fell onto Han Li. Han Li gently smiled at the old man in response. With both amazement and doubt in mind, he turned his gaze back to Ku Yao and his expression sank. Old Man Ma's gaze flickered several times and he sullenly said, "That fire python of yours isn't an ordinary spirit beast." Ku Yao paused for a moment before sneering, "Oh? So you have some judgment after all. My fire python is formed from a worldly fire spirit. It isn't comparable to a spirit beast in the slightest." His body trembled for a moment and the fire python on his body brightly shined with red light before taking to the skies. A horn suddenly emerged from the python's head and fierce claws grew from its body, revealing its form to be a fire flood dragon with sparkling red scales. It roiled in a fierce display as it flew above Ku Yao's head. Transformed fire spirit. The bald man couldn't help but shout from his alarm. As for Jiu Shuangpu, his expression grew unsightly. Old Man Ma felt his heart drop. His opponent's flame techniques had reached a stage where he could refine and transform fire spirits. This wasn't something an ordinary nascent soul stage spell warrior was capable of. There was going to be a fierce battle ahead of him. With that thought, Old Man Ma erased his original plan of only using 70% of his strength to fight the enemy. He took a deep breath and widely swept his sleeve, summoning an item that was wrapped in a rainbow glow. It circled once around his head and stopped a meter above it. At that moment, the cultivators below and the spell warriors in the distance both watched with curiosity. A treasure that was able to flicker with rainbow light was likely something of exceptional quality. Han Li also glanced at this item. The item was round and slim, a meter-long faintly yellow scroll. The scroll faced Ku Yao and slowly unrolled itself as Old Man Ma began to gravely chant an incantation. As a result, the scroll revealed a drawing of an ordinary 8-trigram diagram. Old Man Ma then struck the scroll with a seemingly basic spell seal and had the scroll shine brightly, suddenly releasing astonishing fluctuations from the diagram. When Ku Yao saw these fluctuations, he knew things were far from good and immediately pointed at the old man. The fire flood dragon floating above his head suddenly opened its mouth and spouted an unending stream of scarlet flames, instantly engulfing Old Man Ma and the 8-trigram diagram in a sea of flames. Chapter 733, Supreme 8 Trigrams Diagram. The bald man and the others wore an anxious expression when they saw the Old Man Ma envelop the flames. However, they all secretly knew that Old Man Ma had taken out the scroll for a reason. Sure enough, Old Man Ma was standing safely within the sea of flames. His hands were formed in an incantation gesture and the scroll was rolled out in front of him. Then in pulsing white light and roaring gales, a pillar of white wind emerged from the scroll, surging around an area over 30 meters around him. The sea of flames surrounding him had been mostly swept away with ease. Then with a furious howl from Old Man Ma, a streak of silver light shot out from the pillar of wind, directly striking at Ku Yao without any concern for the flood dragon floating above him. It seemed that Old Man Ma clearly understood that so long as he could injure Ku Yao, the spirit-connected fire flood dragon would greatly decrease in might. Curling the corner of his mouth, Ku Yao waved his arm, releasing a translucent flying saber that shined with brilliant, scarlet light from his palm. The saber instantly moved to block the silver streak and collided with it in midair, resulting in an unequal clash as red and silver light intertwined. When Ku Yao saw this, a cold glint appeared in his eye. With a flip of his hands, he summoned 2 red inch-large flags into his grasp before tossing them into the air. In a burst of wind, they instantly grew to 3 meters tall. Following a cryptic incantation from Ku Yao, red light suddenly glowed from the flags and 2 thick columns of flame erupted, converging onto the fire flood dragon's horn, giving rise to a large cloud of weak flames nearby. Go! Ku Yao ceased his incantation and puffed a mist of red chi onto the fire flood dragon above him. With roused spirits, the flood dragon roared with delight before charging into the fire cloud, turning it crimson and causing it to roil. But soon, it began to rapidly shrink. Down below, Han Li narrowed his eyes at the sight of this with pupils glowing blue. Through the bright sight spirit eyes, he was able to astonishingly discover that the fire dragon hiding inside the cloud was breathing in the fire cloud with reckless abandon. In the blink of an eye, the fire cloud was cleanly devoured and the flood dragon rapidly increased in size, raising to over 30 meters in height. With its head the size of a small building and its bared fangs, it appeared truly malevolent. At that moment, the surging white pillar of wind had entirely blown away the sea of flames, revealing only Old Man Ma who stood inside it. As he held the 8 trigram scroll in his hands, he coldly watched the tremendous flood dragon for only a moment before wordlessly flinging the scroll into the air. The scroll then shot into the sky in a streak of rainbow light and promptly disappeared into the skies above, as if attempting to reach its farthest reaches. Ku Yao blinked in astonishment. In his hesitation, he suddenly sensed a series of odd spiritual chi fluctuations from above him. Slivers of rainbow light then began to shine down from the sky, revealing a 100-meter-wide 8 trigram formation enveloped entirely in rainbow light. It directly shot down from the sky without any resistance. Ku Yao's expression vastly changed and instantly pointed at the fire flood dragon without any further thought. The flood dragon immediately raised its head and spouted a scarlet stream of light from its mouth, directly striking at the bottom portion of the formation. The formation faintly trembled for a moment, but it continued falling as if unaffected. With a paled complexion, Ku Yao rubbed his hands together before suddenly raising them, shooting a dense barrage of countless fist-sized fireballs into the sky. Han Li's heart stirred at the sight of this. This wasn't something that was a result of many fireball talismans, but something that had been instantly produced by one's own cultivation. Spell warrior spirit techniques were vastly beyond what ordinary elemental Daoist techniques were capable, and were far more useful in battle as a result. As Han Li's mind wandered, the many fireballs struck the underside of the huge formation like shower of meteors. However, this strike also proved to be of little effect. The diagram continued falling down with immense speed as it enveloped Ku Yao and his flood dragon. At that moment, the cultivators and spell warriors watching the battle were no longer able to see Ku Yao. They only saw the huge 8 trigram formation slowly revolve as they surrounded it. Old Man Ma didn't reveal the slightest delight from having his attack succeed. Rather, he solemnly sat cross-legged with his hands forming an incantation gesture as soft white light twirled around his body. At that same moment, the huge diagram seemed to have merged with the rainbow light and suddenly released rolls of deafening thunder, pulsing with light as it flickered. The shriveled spell warrior wore a worried expression on his face. He turned to the black-robed figure and politely asked, "Sir Heaven Weep, will Sage Ku Yao be fine in there? If it's dangerous, we don't need to respect the agreement for a one-on-one. We can just go in and rescue him." It is truly beyond belief that this nascent soul cultivator could possess such an odd ancient treasure. The black-robed figure softly laughed. "Don't worry about him," he said with a careless tone. "While that Supreme 8 trigram diagram is a truly formidable ancient treasure, this cultivator still hasn't grasped the true method to use it. He is barely able to use it by forcing his spiritual power into the treasure. This won't be able to hold fellow Daoist Ku for much longer. This brutish method of using the formation diagram will surely consume a great amount of magic power. How foolish! But still, it is no surprise that few know the true method to use such a rare ancient treasure in this remote area." His words seemed to carry a tone of disdain towards the cultivators of the heavenly south. The shriveled spell warrior relaxed when he heard this and decided to temporarily hold on his plan to organize a party of spell warriors to rescue Ku Yao. As for the bald man and the others, their expressions possessed both worry and joy. They had been excited when they saw the spell warrior trapped by the 8 trigrams formation. But when they saw Old Man Ma still maintaining the formation with a solemn expression with strange sounds occasionally sounded out from within the formation, they knew that the battle was far from over. For a time, the old man had actually been cursing without end. This treasure was something that he had only recently acquired, and he had only previously used it against core formation cultivators. Those cultivators had been entirely powerless before this treasure and were each killed with ease. However, this spell warrior was able to temporarily obstruct the diagram through use of his own attacks along with the unceasing, ferocious attacks of his flame dragon. Stabilizing the interruptions caused by these attacks had drained much spiritual power from the formation diagram. The battle in the air grew calm for the moment. Apart from faint explosions sounding out from within the formation diagram, there was only silence. Worry became more apparent on the faces of Heavenly South cultivators. Han Li was the only one who still maintained a calm expression as he watched the battle unfold. Silver Moon clicked her tongue from the back of Han Li's mind in disappointment. That fellow Daoist Ma is truly overexerting that treasure by using the Supreme 8 trigram diagram in this manner. That ancient treasure is no weaker than the purple cloud lace. With a still expression, Han Li inwardly asked, "Supreme 8 trigram diagram? You know of this ancient treasure?" "Of course," Silvermoon quickly answered. "It was a renowned ancient treasure in the past. However, it seems this particular treasure is of poor quality. Otherwise, that spell warrior should have already perished, despite the old man's ignorance usage of the treasure. If it were a high-quality 8 trigram diagram, the magic power consumption wouldn't be so great." After some hesitation, Han Li asked, "If a poor quality diagram can display this much power, then what would a good quality diagram be capable of? When you say that the purple cloud lace is no weaker than this treasure, could it be that there is a secret method that must be used to draw out its full power?" Silvermoon smiled and replied, "The purple cloud lace isn't that troublesome to use. You simply need to pour spiritual power into it and use it. Furthermore, the Jade Sun True Fire only takes a few tries before it is properly grasped." When Han Li heard this, he grew silent. He gazed then turned towards the sky once more and he frowned, thinking, "Not good." A huge explosion rippled through the air, and the 8 trigram diagram suddenly distorted. Countless beams of red light shot out from the diagram, tearing away at the formation. As this shocking scene occurred, another series of explosions sounded out from the corner of the formation. A ball raging flames emerged and shot 30 meters straight up before fading away, revealing Ku Yao with a blood-red complexion as he stood on top of the fire flood dragon. The flood dragon had returned to the size of 3 meters from an unknown time, and appeared vastly weakened. To the side, Old Man Ma didn't appear much better. His face was pale and his eyes listless. However, the old man gritted his teeth and waved his arm at the shredded formation diagram. In a flash of rainbow light, it flew back into the sky and dropped back down into the old man's hand as a scroll. Chapter 734, Heaven Flash Devil Arts. When the old man saw that the scroll was in tatters, his face greatly paled. It was clearly ruined beyond use. What a pity! The black-robed figure spoke with a trace of regret. If fellow Daoist Ku Yao hadn't been in such a rush to break free and used his fire spirit's vitality to stall of time, that cultivator's magic power would have been exhausted and he would have taken the initiative to dispel the formation diagram regardless. The shriveled cultivator pondered for a moment before he found himself agreeing. With the spell warrior broken free, Old Man Ma's complexion turned sickly pale as he grasped onto the scroll. He quickly placed it away in his storage pouch and viciously gazed at Ku Yao. Ku Yao snorted in response and had the flood dragon beneath him surge once more with flames and red light. The shriveled spell warrior suddenly shouted from above, "Sage Ku Yao, cease." He then turned to the Heavenly South cultivators and said, "How about ending this battle in a draw? Both of their magic power is nearly exhausted. Nothing will result from having this battle continue." The bald man was somewhat surprised to hear this. After exchanging a look with Jiyu Shuangpu, he nodded his head. "That is fine. Let's have this battle end." Although Old Man Ma felt somewhat opposed this decision, he knew that it would be futile to continue the battle and flew back without any better option. Ku Yao also felt gloomy at this decision and begrudgingly recalled his flood dragon before flying back into the spell warrior ranks. Old Man Ma returned down below and received a few consoling words from the bald man, easing the tension from the old man's face. But at that moment, the black-robed spell warrior and the shriveled old man was muttering something to each other. As a result, the black-robed figure gently floated in the air and arrived at the location of the previous battle. He gloomily swept his gaze past the other cultivators and a trace of contempt was revealed from his eyes. In his hoarse voice, he said, "This time, you will be fighting me, but I will say this first. This battle will last until someone is dead. Don't have any delusions of stopping this battle while it is in progress." The black-robed figure's arrogant words infuriated Jiyu Shuangpu and the bald man. However, the two didn't dare to rise up to the challenge. They both knew that two nascent soul cultivators have already perished at the hands of this strange spell warrior. As they still greatly valued their lives, they were hesitant. "Let me try him on," Han Li indifferently said. The bald man blinked in surprise upon seeing Han Li take the initiative to fight, but soon, he inwardly sighed with relief. "Ah, fellow Daoist Han wishes to go? You must take care. If there is something amiss, we will naturally go to rescue you." Han Li smiled and said little else. Azure light glowed from his body before he streaked across the skies. In the blink of an eye, he arrived before the black-robed figure, and expressionlessly stood in the air with his hands held behind his back. The black-robed figure appraised Han Li for a moment before his eyes began to turn from black to green in what appeared to be a monstrous display. Han Li narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you demon or ghost? You don't think this old man is human?" The black figure coldly chuckled. At that same moment, inky threads of black chi began to wrap around his body. Ghostly wails soon began to howl, followed by gusts of yin wind. Han Li took a short breath and calmly said, "So you were originally a man, but it seems that you've cultivated the Tao of a demon or ghost." "Humph. Junior, you speak too much rubbish. There is no need to examine me any further as you will soon die by my hand. Don't waste your effort." With that said, black chi suddenly surged around his body, nearly hiding him entirely from sight. "As I don't have the patience to play with you, I'll be taking your life now." The black-robed old man sinisterly laughed and formed an incantation gesture with his hands. Suddenly, he grew to giant about 6 meters in height. Although the vortex of yin qi surrounding him mostly blocked him out of sight, one could faintly make out 2 horns poking out from the robes and 2 fangs as well. It was no wonder so many cultivators believed this unfamiliar spell warrior was a transformed oddity. Han Li's eyes shined with blue light, revealing the huge man's ferocious appearance. "What?" Han Li was shocked by the demonic appearance of the huge man. His current appearance was exactly the same as the one of the phantoms of the 6 apex devils he encountered when he fought the disciple of Archsaint Six Paths. Chapter 573. What relation does your esteemed self have with Archsaint Six Paths? The huge man evilly grinned after a moment of surprise. "Who is this Archsaint Six Paths? Don't think that your nonsense will allow you to stall for time. Accept your death." He then raised his hand and scattered some of the black qi, suddenly shooting a black object towards Han Li. However, the object flashed with black light as soon as it left the cover of the black qi and disappeared from sight. Han Li's expression sank and suddenly shot back 10 meters. At that same moment, a huge ghost claw appeared where he was originally standing. The attack was so sudden, it seemed to have materialized out of thin air. Yee! The huge demonic figure yelped in surprise at seeing his attack miss. Han Li stared at the ghost hand and indifferently said, "Not bad at all. Although you aren't a ghost Dao cultivator, as you cultivate devil Dao techniques, your methods of attack are quite similar to ghost cultivators. If one were to truly regard you as a ghost cultivator, they would definitely suffer." The large demonic man stayed still as it coldly glanced at Han Li. At that same moment, Han Li frowned and he moved about 10 meters to the side in a blur. As a result, yet another green ghost claw had silently struck where he once stood. The huge man was no longer able to keep his calm after missing a second time and asked, "Since you've already dodged 2 of my attacks, could it be that you'd seen other ghost cultivators in the past?" "Of course I have. How else could I have so easily dodged your attacks?" Han Li replied smilingly with a half-truth. "Humph. Your esteemed self is actually a vastly experienced individual. Regardless, even if you know that I use devil Dao techniques, what will come of it? With the might of the Heaven Flash devil arts, you will be dead in only a moment." The huge man spoke sinisterly. He then abruptly released an intense, ear-piercing whistle that was capable of even splitting stone. When Han Li saw this, his calm expression turned stern. The black qi enveloping the huge man began to rapidly revolve in place. Soon after, an astonishingly powerful wave of devilish qi suddenly erupted out of thin air, and the huge man shot out from the black qi, instantly arriving before Han Li as he left afterimages in his wake. With a slight movement of his arms, an impenetrable flurry of black-green claws immediately surrounded him. It seemed that he intended to use his claws to cut Han Li into countless pieces. Han Li took a deep breath and wore an odd expression as he remained in place. He slapped his hands together before spreading them out, summoning a net of golden lightning around him. With thunder ringing in the air, Han Li glanced at the claws around him with complete fearlessness. Without any further thought, the huge black figure then ordered the claws to strike Han Li without mercy. From the huge black figure's point of view, common devilish arts might be subdued by lightning attribute techniques, but the Heaven Flash devil arts is by no measure common. It wouldn't be stopped by some trifling lightning. However, the cultivator he faced seemed to know quite a bit. Much to his unease, he felt it best to immediately dispose of him. But before the black figure finished his thoughts, he suddenly felt his own claws grow hot, soon followed by an unimaginable pain. Golden light then brightly shined from before him. The golden lightning net had actually broken through the claw phantoms and was making its way to envelop him. Unable to protect himself from behind and trapped by the net of golden lightning, a legend he once heard suddenly appeared in his mind. In the past, when he was learning of this devilish art, his master had repeatedly warned him of the greatest nemesis of the Heaven Flash devil arts. But because he had never encountered any equal opponents after cultivating this devilish art, he had forgotten about this matter. Golden lightning? It can't be. It's so similar. Don't tell me. The black figure's expression grew completely tense and he felt his heart drop. Unwilling to remain idle in the oncoming danger, he immediately howled and had his tall stature suddenly shrink in size, becoming a dwarf that was only a meter tall, buying him more time before the golden net struck him. In that time that he bought, his shrunken body suddenly fluctuated in size before hastily erupting into countless threads of black light, scattering in every direction. Chapter 735, Two-Tailed Serpent. A cold glint shined from Han Li's eyes, and he suddenly shook his hands, shooting a bolt of lightning towards the golden net. Countless arcs of lightning began to spark from the net upon impact, causing it to instantly constrict. Then, each of the black threads collided against the golden lightning. With a huge flash, the golden lightning turned the black threads of qi into ash, each burned thread accompanied by a wretched and tragic scream. Soon, the remaining black threads returned towards the center of the golden net, condensing into a glossy black demon nascent. Its face was filled to the brim with fear. It opened its mouth and spat out clouds and clouds pitch-black yin qi. They quickly wrapped around it in layers in an attempt to prevent the divine devilbane lightning from approaching any closer to its body. Han Li's face was expressionless apart from the sneer that momentarily appeared. From his hand, he shot a bolt of lightning, so dazzling and bright it was difficult to see, and enveloped the demon nascent. Yet another miserable shriek soon followed and the rolls of thunder quieted down, leaving only silence for a short while. When Han Li saw this, he inwardly sighed with relief before retracting his remaining lightning and taking a pitch-black storage pouch into his hand. He then raised his head and expressionlessly swept his gaze past the spell warriors up above. Then, with azure light shining from his body, he flew back down towards the heavenly south cultivators. After an exchange of a few brief words, Han Li exterminated his opponent with divine devilbane lightning with unbelievable speed. Not only were the heavenly south cultivators dumbfounded, the Mulan spell warriors completely shaken with disbelief. While the heavenly south cultivators didn't know about the finer details of the black-robed figure, they had a general idea. These mysterious cultivators should have arrived at the Mulan plains from a great continent. Although they didn't know why these cultivators suddenly appeared at the Mulan plains, they reached some sort of agreement with the 3 divine sages of the Mulan tribes. And it was clear to see that these cultivators had abilities far beyond cultivators of a similar grade. Before the true war even started, 2 heavenly south nascent soul cultivators had perished one after another, earning the confidence of these 2 Mulan sages. As for why the black-robed figure participated in the second battle, it was because he felt that there were too many nascent soul stage cultivators that were guarding the grand formation, and he felt it best to first exterminate one while he could. But who could have known that this ordinary-appearing youth would actually be able to kill the black-robed figure with ease? Not even his nascent soul was able to escape, much to the shock of the 2 spell warriors. When the shriveled spell warrior and Ku Yao regained clarity of mind, he glanced at each other with terror and hesitated for a moment, not knowing whether or not they should continue the battle, or deal with the uproar of the spell warriors behind them. But at that moment, they suddenly heard a faint, nearly inaudible voice speak in their ear. "Retreat for now. Our momentum has already died. Let us further consider our plans tomorrow. When that time comes, that formation may already be, he. While Heaven Weep's death will be inconvenient, I'll personally explain the matter to the divine sages." The voice sounded neutral in tone, but the words carried an unmistakable air of command. The shriveled man, the Ku Yao, was stunned for a moment upon hearing the voice, but they soon complied with their orders and began to give commands to the spell warriors under their command. With some disturbance, the army made an about-face and slowly retreated. The 2 sages naturally brought up the rear, gloomily watching the cultivators as they retreated. They glared at in particularly Han Li before flying off. Jiyu Shuangpu watched the spell warrior army retreat and doubtfully asked, "Should we pursue them?" "Leave them be." The bald man shook his head and said, "Although they're retreating, they still haven't been defeated. If we were to pursue them, we could find ourselves surrounded. Also, we have to guard the grand formation. It'll be best if we nurtured our strength and bide our time. Our Yellow Dragon Mountain's 1,000 soundform formation isn't easily broken. If the Mulan wish to seize it, they will need to double their forces at the very least." After that was said, the bald man couldn't help but turn his eyes towards Han Li. Due to the surprise of Han Li managing to kill the black-robed cultivator, the cultivators found themselves in an awkward silence, all at a loss of what to say. As of current, Han Li was wearing a faint smile as he fiddled with a black storage pouch in his hands. Originally, Han Li's faint smiles hardly inspired any feelings in these cultivators. But after he managed to kill a nascent soul cultivator, Han Li's smile now gave them a profound and odd feeling, not to mention that their original contempt for him was now completely gone. The bald man smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Han, congratulations on slaying a high-grade spell warrior. I will be certain to inform the 9 Nations Alliance of your achievement. They will most definitely reward you greatly." Old Man Ma and Jiyu Shuangpu also congratulated him with a smile. However, Han Li's expression still remained as subtle as before, despite the faint admiration and respect their tones held. As if ignoring this, Han Li simply exchanged a few courteous pleasantries with them as his gaze unconsciously wandered to one of them in particular. When nobody noticed this, he couldn't help but wear an indistinct smirk. Once the spell warrior army disappeared from sight, the bald man opened a passageway into the mist down below, and the party hastily disappeared from sight, the mist closing its entrance soon afterwards. Now, the surroundings of the Yellow Dragon Mountains grew peaceful once more. When Han Li and company returned to the hall, they had a quick discussion about the battles that occurred today before returning to their own residences to rest. Old Man Ma in particular not only had his treasure destroyed, but his vitality had greatly suffered as well. He was in dire need to rest and recover. Thus in the blink of an eye, only the bald man remained in the hall. He sat in the main building and lowered his head, his mind lost in thought. A short moment later, he suddenly raised his eyebrow and a strange expression appeared on his face. He softly shouted, "Who is there? Come out." Then with a flash of light, another person appeared in the hall. He. Brother Lu's abilities are truly profound. Just as I entered, he was able to perceive me. It is not wonder why the Nine Nations Alliance had you guard the formation alone. The bald man frowned and wore a strange expression. You? Why aren't you resting? Why did you come back stealthily? It's nothing. I merely discovered a secret. I felt that I should have a discussion with you. The bald man glanced at him with an appraising look and puzzlingly asked, "Secret? What secret?" The drifting cloud sect's fellow Daoist Han is likely a spy for the Mulan. He spoke without the slightest hesitation and slowly walked inside. The bald man involuntarily laughed and his face was filled with disbelief. Spy? Could it be that your mind if unclear? Fellow Daoist Han had just slain a nascent soul spell warrior today. The thought is ridiculous. I know that Brother Lu might not believe it, but I have evidence. You'll know that I'm speaking the truth. This person sighed and bitterly smiled before summoning a jade slip into his hand with a flash of light. He then stepped forward and neared the large man. The bald man wore an expression of astonishment and stood up to face him. He then calmly took the jade slip into his hand. At the same time the bald man took the jade slip into his hand, his expression vastly changed and a fierce expression appeared in his eyes. In a flash of green light, the jade slip suddenly turned into a small emerald green snake. It bit the bald man's wrist with the speed of lightning. With an expression of shock, he couldn't even scream before he motionlessly collapsed onto the floor, his complexion turned a black violet. Joy flickered from the man's face and he muttered, "The twin-tailed jade serpent is truly as poisonous as its reputation. It is no less inferior than the 10 Supremes' poison. After the bite, it robs even a nascent soul the power to escape. If the snake was able to fly, it'd be an incredibly powerful method of killing other cultivators." He then took a step forward to examine the corpse that was slowly melting. The small dark green snake released its fangs from the corpse and slid away, revealing the 2 slim tails on its back. Its 2 tails struck the earth and then flung itself into the palm of its master. It coiled around itself and hissed with its purple-black tongue, its eyes glowing with an eerie dark green light. At that moment, this person lightly waved his hand and took the corpse's storage pouch into his hand. He then excitedly searched the storage pouch with his spiritual sense as if he were looking for something in particular.